Did you guys see this ruggedized NUC? How crazy is this thing? You ready for this? It's a NUC with Broadwell and Bay Trail. You can go with a couple of gigabit ports on some of them. The standard one only has 1 gigabit port. It's fanless. It's got this built-in
one
cooling.
with 2 gigabit ports?
Yeah.
Router, bitches!
Yeah, and also no fans. Look at that. It's got the finned cooling there. I think it's pretty cool. The one thing I'm not happy with these NUCs is the power supply, but this one looks like it has an interlocking connector, a little bit better of a superior connector, which would be better for production. Like, I want to put these in a rack and make them Skype rigs. It's pretty cool. I know it's overkill, but they're pretty neat. They're using the 14 nanometer Broadwell processors. Gosh, these are kind of cool.
Well,
Serial port.
Look
at this, Alan.
Alan,
this is perfect. It's got a serial port right here on the front for you. Now,
I saw the newer ones with a serial port demonstrated. They got a live demo of Zen with FreeBSD as a host at AsiaBSDCon. The guy brought a NUC that was all set up with FreeBSD Zen.
So FreeBSD was the host of the Zen virtualizer?
FreeBSD as DOM0.
How does that work?
Zen has been ported to FreeBSD.
I thought that was a Linux kernel thing.
Nope.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Now, why with Beehive so close?
There's lots of people. What's that? Well, because Zen can run Windows on FreeBSD already, and Beehive is a long way off for that.
Gotcha. Oh, of course, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Although Beehive is further ahead in hardware pass-through, but Zen will be able to catch up more easily.
Wow.
Basically, because Citrix realized that Linux is toxic.
Oh, ouch, Alan. That hurts.
They don't want to be the next VMware.
Wow, Alan. Wow.
Right?
Oh, my gosh. Look at you. Nice. Those are good ones. That's fine, Alan. It doesn't hurt.
Sorry, I wasn't trolling.
I felt like good trolling.
We believe you. It's very good trolling. I understand. Yes, but at the same time, people just don't want to get sued.
Welcome to Linux Unplugged, your weekly Linux talk show that's feeling the luck of the Irish. My name is Chris.
And my name is Matt.
Oh, hey, Matt. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. Are you doing anything to celebrate the festivities today?
Realizing that everything I own that is green, it is dirty, and I am hiding in my house because of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good call, Matt. That's a good call.
Yeah.
See, the St. Patrick's Day, we're not big on the drinking these days, but we wanted to make it special. So 8 years ago on St. Patrick's Day, I married the wife, the Angela Fisher. Yeah, so today's our anniversary, so we get to have extra fun on St. Patrick's Day. So also a special happy anniversary to Angela. And I'll be going home after Linux Unplugged, and maybe we'll do something fun for dinner. But
cool.
We today have a great show, even though I don't think anybody's drinking. Man, we screwed that one up. I don't have any beer in the studio today. But we do have a great show coming up. I have a make good first. Just a little bit towards the feedback. I wanted to play an interview with an Ubuntu representative at Scale a couple of weeks ago, but we had some clipping in the video, so I said, scrap it. Well, I went back, I figured out why it was clipping, and I pulled out probably the most important bit, and that is Noah says, well, what are you guys going to do to challenge Android in the market share? He pins that question on him, and then after he answers that question, Noah says, okay, so what are you going to do to get desktop staples like Thunderbird to work in a converged environment? And he has an answer for that. Two great questions, so I pulled those out. We're going to play those and see what Canonical's answer is in a converged desktop. But Matt, we have a lot of other things to get to, like the ultimate Linux laptop. We got a lot of other things, Matt. But right now, we got to stop and recognize that something very important has happened in the world of Linux today, Tuesday, March 17th, 2015. BioShock graces Linux. Right now, I have it installed on my machine upstairs. BioShock Infinite is officially available for Linux. Little bit of a mixed blessing. Really good game. Really, I actually installed the trial, like 120-day eval of Windows 8 to try this game. I was so excited. And I loved it. I just couldn't stand using Windows, so I quit playing. And I said, I'll just wait for Linux. Now I know I love the game. I already own it. I'll just wait for Linux. I don't ever do that. I made an exception with this game, and I really, really enjoyed it. Today I downloaded it and started playing again. It was working beautifully. I have it set to max settings, full screen resolution, which on my 2K monitor looks really great. However, it is using that same Eon wrapper that The Witcher 2 was using that got a lot of criticism.
Well, so the $10,000 question is, how's it affecting performance? Because that's always my go-to thing before we get into, like, you know, whether it's right or wrong. Or...
I think it's too early to say, because last time we had this come out, you know, I didn't have any performance issues. Again, I don't have any performance issues, but of course I'm running it on an NVIDIA card, pretty modern driver set, pretty good i7 off of a 10,000 RPM RAID 0 set of drives. Like, it's a pretty good use case scenario for something that's going to be heavy. And they recommend, you know, the NVIDIA 340 graphics driver. So it's semi-recent, and, you know, at least a Radeon 7X or greater card. I don't know. I'm going to wait and see. I think we have to see it on a wider range of hardware, but it's at least a title that we can. I mean, it's now available for Linux. That's
it'll get griefed as soon as the whole, you know, how they're doing it comes about, I'm sure. But I think it's going to come down more to someone's, you know, whether or not that's a concern for them based on principles, or whether or not they're just concerned about whether or not a game is buggy or not. Yeah. Myself, I don't care if it runs on Cheetos. Right. As long as it runs, it runs.
And Humi points out Eon has gotten better since The Witcher 2 release, and they have. You know, here's one thing to consider. It is very easy from a non-developer's perspective to sit back on the side and go, oh, well, it's using some sort of API translator. It must be inferior. But the reality is you and I, for most of us, we have no idea how game development works. They're probably using several layers of abstraction already, from the tools they're using to develop the game, right? I mean, all of this stuff is already pulled way away from the metal as it is. So we really don't know what we're talking about. It is for all we know, perhaps using well-proven and laid out development methods that they can then just easily wrap some APIs around. Maybe that is a better way to go. Who knows? I don't. But I do know the game's now available, and I was able to play it for about 20 minutes today before the show started, and I really enjoyed myself. For me, it was worth the price. But I would say, if you're concerned, and I think maybe there's a reason to be based on previous games, why not wait a week or two? You know the Linux Gamecast guys are going to review it at some point, see what they're going to say. Go read the reviews on Steam. Go check out Linux_Gaming on Reddit. There's already a thread going about how it's working for people and the kind of performance they're seeing. So go check out all of that. Before we move off of this, Daredevil, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, for me as a developer, that's precisely why I care if they're using a wrapper or not. Because I know that when they are not using a wrapper, they're actually saying that, okay, Linux has the APIs required to make a good game happen. And Linux provides the capabilities needed for a developer. Now, yes, I understand that they're doing a port of an existing game, but still, it doesn't show appreciation or doesn't actually endorse Linux. It just says, we have a market on it.
No, see, this game is in that category of games that were developed many years ago. If you think about when that game came to market, how many years under development was it? So by the time it comes to market, they've already bet on a different type of technology platform. And there's just no financial sense in reworking that for a platform that has a tiny market share. And so these wrappers make a lot of sense. But if you were to start a game today and, say, take advantage of something like the Unreal 4 engine, well, then you're going to have a first-class Linux game. And so I don't really think it's so much of a statement on the state of Linux, because you can do it today with a first-class game using the right tools. I think it's more a statement on like how much it's worth it. You know, if this platform was worth it for them, like you could see a company you could see some companies maybe going in and doing a complete rewrite to make it work for the iPad, because they could make thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars an hour on the iPad. But you're not going to see that when they're going to sell, you know, maybe 1 to 2 to 5% of their overall sales go to Linux. This is not worth a complete rewrite. What it really is to sort of check off that box, and now you can say this title's available for the SteamOS platform.
Sure, but then I think it's the way that you spread the message, right?
Yeah.
It's like, now on Linux, like, that kind of is a little bit misleading, you know? And also, it's not that they couldn't have used these things a while back as well, because if it was just quote-unquote easy to use a shim to see and explore the waters of the platform, so they already had that thing, because apparently they didn't create one new shim. They are just using some that already existed.
Although Eon claims the shim is customized for each game.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Do you know if this actually came from the dev studio, or is some like company like Eon coming up to the development studio and saying, let us be the guys who port it for you.
Right, yes, exactly.
Or shim it for you, or whatever you want to call it. And the original developers have nothing to do with the Linux version. Which way is it?
No. I mean, of course, they still have the original developers still have something to do with it. But yeah, a lot of times they contract it out to, not in this case, but in some cases, companies like Aspire and others that handle that aspect of the port.
I just remember how it was with the original Torchlight, where the guy who was contracted to do it, he actually made like a full-fledged port where he ripped out the original game engine, whatever it was, and put Augur 3D instead in there. And it was buggy, and Runic Games did not want to support it because it was a solid portion of it wasn't even their code. So like, this is porting games is a very, very complicated thing, and I think, like you mentioned before, we just have to set our expectations to reflect whatever game developers think they can make by like how much money they can make by porting the games to Linux.
I'm gonna sit back and see what the reviews say. And Matt, you wrote an article this week. I was just kind of going to point people's attention to, because we've been getting a lot of questions into the show about VoIP solutions for Linux. So kind of perfect timing. You had a state of VoIP and Linux right up over at Datamation. And I love it because you touch on Skype, which of course is the go-to. You got Jitsi in here, which is I've been playing more and more with. And you nailed Jitsi. It's like it's got its good and its bads in here. And of course the classic Ikagia. So it's a good write-up. Good timing.
Oh, I appreciate that. And it's something that Noah and I have actually gone back and forth. When you guys were first kind of coming into the changeover for Linux Action Show, we were kind of looking at the different clients and fallback clients and things like that. And it's not that cut and dry. It's like when it comes to video, you're looking at WebRTC solutions. That's my opinion. I swear by them now. I've been playing with this one for a while. It's awesome. It's stupid easy. There's no configuration. Anything on Linux, I think it's going to be Skype or that. I don't think anything else is going to matter.
Yeah.
Forward.
And Matt talks about his favorite in the article and some of the key differences between it and Skype. So check it out. Yeah, and I agree. I played with some of those
for the BSD Now show, and we really liked a couple of them. But all of them had a local preview of my camera that I couldn't turn off. That clipped over up somebody else's face or something, which made it hard to use for production.
Yeah, exactly. It's the kind of stuff you don't even care about until you're doing it in production. Like, wait, I can't have a preview video because that's in the shot. I can't have it in the shot. That's distracting.
Yeah. Well, it was covering half of Chris's face when we were doing. If it was just me and Chris, it worked fine. But if we were trying to have a third person on for the interview, it would cover a quarter of Chris's face with a preview of my face, and people only need one of my face at a time.
Well, I don't know. Point. You can never have too much Allen face, but I guess we'll
so
have to
agree. I emailed one of the WebRTC platforms asking if they could make an option to hide that or turn it off or something for us. Although I don't know.
I think that would be very easy to do in Firefox Hello, but unfortunately, Firefox Hello doesn't currently support conference calls, so it's just two people.
I think you could do it in Jitsi Web, but I can't remember.
Well, some of the options that I highlighted, you can actually do conference calls. You can do screen sharing via extension, which worked out really well.
Like Chris put all the effort into getting all the screen sharing and stuff working in Firefox on PCBSD. So it's all ships by default working perfectly now, so that we could also do tutorials that way.
Yeah.
But then my face covers up part of his face.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. That's a big not going to work in production at all. That's a big thing that needs to be resolved for sure.
But, the nice thing is there can be different implementations of it. And once it really gains traction, there's going to be one for podcasters and people like
So that's the thing is that the WebRTC is just so close to being perfect.
Yep.
Missing that one thing.
Yeah.
It's like everything open source.
Yeah. Oh, but they'll get there. I think it will. I think a company
I think it will.
Yeah, I think somebody will close the gap. And then somebody should, some pioneering podcast network should just make a product and just sell it.
There you go.
Well, if what you're using is open source, it shouldn't be too hard to remove your face from being displayed at all. It should be just. You should just have to delete like 3 lines of code and it should work.
Oh, the other thing that was difficult is Firefox didn't want to use a different playback device. I could pick which camera and microphone to use.
It's got to be your default
system. I couldn't force it. Yeah, and for the podcast, I want that to be different.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes multiple audios. Yeah. All right. So we're going to get to an email that came in that agrees with everything Wimpy had to say recently. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, I should probably take a moment here to thank our friends over at Ting. I have just so many good things to say about my Ting GSM service on the Nexus 5. I have gotten so so excited at simple things these days. Like, I don't know what it is about it, but like the combination of the Pebble Watch with the Nexus 5 on Lollipop with unlocked on the GSM network, I feel like I have finally hit like the trifecta of amazing. And the great thing is not only do I have just amazing coverage here at the studio, but I'm on Wi-Fi, so it's not like a huge deal. But my drive now is just impeccable coverage, spotless coverage. So yeah, I'm having a little fun. I'm downloading podcasts, I'm streaming stuff a little bit. But why not? It's great coverage, and that's one of the things I love about Ting is because I'm just paying for what I use. So this month, if I want to have a little fun, I don't have to worry about going over on some plan. That's not how it works with Ting. You just pay for your usage. It's a flat $6 for the line. And then Ting just takes your minutes and your messages and your megabytes, they add them up, and that's just what you pay. I've got 3 lines. I've got an iPhone 5, an HTC One, and a Nexus 5. Now, the Nexus 5 is my daily driver, and I have it totally tricked out these days too, you guys. It is I have if this then that all set up on here, so it's like tracking all my time. I've got automatic, so I'm tracking all my car information and I'm logging my miles for taxes. And it's all powered by the Ting network, and so I always have connectivity. I'm always either on Wi-Fi or Ting GSM. I love the coverage. And I love, too, that if I need to go somewhere maybe they have better CDMA coverage, I could always switch my Nexus 5 back, because the Nexus 5 can do either or. That is so slick. And right now, if you go over to Ting, go to linux.ting.com. Go there. That'll support our show and give you a $25 off any device you want to buy from Ting, or a $25 service credit. Something you might want to consider picking up is the Ting GSM card. You go to linux.ting.com, they'll give you $25 of credit because this GSM card is only $9. And this GSM card is, you pop out if you need a micro or a regular, whatever you need. All the different cutouts are already there. And you pop it in your device. Noah's got a couple of phones he uses as sort of like bat lines. My buddy Chase from Unfilter uses this for his home security system. You could put this on a module with a Raspberry Pi. I mean, there's so many, $9, and you have a GSM card. And then it's $6 for the line and just your usage. So if it's something that's going to send an occasional report or something you check remotely from your phone from time to time, it is such an economical way to do that. Or, $9 for the SIM card, and then it's $6 for the line, and you can turn it on and off too, by the way. So you don't always even have to be paying the $6. And throw it in. If you've got a tablet that has a GSM SIM slot, throw it in there. And then when you do need it, you just turn it on and you have data. So, or if you've got an old GSM phone, I mean, you can take advantage of the CDMA network or the GSM network. It's really cool. And you can start it by going to linux.ting.com, $25 off that device or a service credit. And go check out their blog. They always got lots of good information. Like, they just broke down what all the different phone acronyms are for the different codes in the phone that you have to give in when you're activating stuff. And they also have a savings calculator, so you can put your current usage in there and see how much you would save. Linux.ting.com. Go check them out. No hold customer service too, 1-855-TING-FTW. And a big thanks to Ting for sponsoring Linux Unplugged. Linux.ting.com. Thanks, you guys. Really appreciate the long-term support of the Linux Unplugged show. They were one of the first sponsors because they really thought this show, a community-focused show, was somewhere they wanted to be. And I really appreciate that vote of confidence. So Linux.ting.com is a great way to support the show. Thanks, Ting. Okay, so we got an email into the show that wanted to touch on a point that Wimpy had made about virtual reality recently in the pre-show. Brian writes in, he says, episode 82 goes down as one of my favorite pre-shows ever. I love the debate between Wimpy and Popey. It was excellent. And I have to agree with Wimpy. During college in 92 and 93, I recall the same 15-pound headset and getting some belt on to move around. This time it was a Line Art World and lob some weird projectiles at another player. Amazing for the time, but I definitely didn't see the push for 20 years later. To Popey's point, the world always moves to how do we get this in the hands of the average consumer, and that's where we're at now. Thanks for the laughs and memories. And to your point, Wimpy, you were essentially saying you think that VR is just another fad again, right?
Yeah, I think it is.
And I think I've come to an agreement with
reality.
You. I was
really?
Yeah, and I know, and I'm an Oculus SDK owner, and when I put it on, I felt like this is an amazing game changer, like life-changing technology. And I believe that statement to be true. I just don't think we'll ever manage to reach mass adoption. Not the way our world works anymore. There's already competing standards before a single headset's really even made it to the mainstream market. And now what's likely to make it to the market first in the fall is Samsung VR, which is a watered-down version of Oculus VR because it has to only work on mobile, which makes it easier for the average person, but it means you're limited to mobile games, and you don't get the super immersive experiences that you get with the desktop games. And that's just a fact. And that's going to be a watered-down experience, and it's not anything I'm all that interested in. I'm interested in the game changer, but I just don't see it. 3-4 wires coming out of my head. I got to hook up HDMI. I got to hook up 2 USB things, and I got to hook up an infrared webcam. I got to have that position just right. I got to set up the mirroring just correct, and then I got to make sure I have the correct version of the game that supports the Oculus. Yeah. Now, I know they could make that easier, but it's a long way from being easy enough for the average consumer, and I just don't think it's going to make it. And that makes me super bummed because I think it could be amazing. I think there's all kinds of applications: teleconferencing, podcasting, gaming, parenting, education. Oh, man, so many educational opportunities for VR. So I hope they don't quit working on it, but Samsung said that by the end of the year, VR, they was going to have, VR, they were going to blast the market with VR, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere by the end of the year. I think we'll be having the same discussion in 2016. That's just me, though.
I would like to see, I think probably, honestly, and this is going to sound terrible, but how cool would it be to have to actually experience people's careers and things like that, or even driver's ed, although it probably with me it'd look like something like GTA, but whatever. It would be interesting.
I know,
what it's like to be a surgeon for a day.
Sure.
That could be a little scary, but
think about movies in virtual reality, the way you could present movies, right? That is, screw VR. Screw 3D. I want a virtual reality movie. Daredevil, go ahead. You had a point to make.
I was just thinking that perhaps it won't happen the way we're looking at just consumer products directly, because actually there is the untapped professional market. So currently there are already extremely expensive simulators for avionics or even, trying cars and things like that. So I think those environments will get it first.
And I could see military
these will increase. Exactly. These will increase the production of these devices, which will significantly decrease the cost of production, which means that then it's accessible to the user market.
So
I think that's the most likely path.
I have 2 comments. I think along with that, I think also high-end gaming, because there you have a user base that's savvy enough to hook up HDMI and multiple USBs and understands the difference between USB 2 and 3 and video mirroring. So then I think that bodes well for Valve and Steam machines, because again, Steam machines are going to be much more accommodating to a VR headset than like a console will be. So if that does enter the market and it's something high-end gamers want, Valve and Steam machines will be uniquely positioned to take advantage of that. But at the same time, I really worry deeply that it's all going to be proprietary and that open source and Linux will be the losers, because so much of this stuff depends on, take your pick, incredible GPU compute power that demands proprietary drivers, check that box. Maybe a back-end cloud infrastructure that requires a subscription and uses a ton of proprietary software, check that box. And in most cases, it's only really going to work very well on the Windows or Mac desktop, so check that box. So I'm a little concerned where we're going towards something here, where that leaves Linux and open source. And does anybody in the Mumble Room have any thoughts?
That's actually interesting. So I think because of what I just mentioned, there is also the likelihood of bringing attraction back to the arcade places that, you have these huge consoles. People used to gather in these places and just play games. But once you have the device in people's hands, I don't think it's like if it's not open source by default, it will be. This is like a rule of nature almost.
Yeah, I suppose honestly, eventually we make an open source version. That's true. I shouldn't worry. Yeah. I'm hoping that happens with BitTorrent Sync too. Come on. Let's do BitTorrent Sync. Let's make an open source clone. Let's do it, everybody. Oh man. All right, good thoughts. All good things. And I continue to play with VR. Either way, I'll continue to play with it. I don't care if everybody else. I don't care if it gets wide adoption, as long as I get to keep playing with it. I have a make good I want to play before we jump into our next segment. It was something I wanted to play a couple of weeks ago, but it was clipping at the time. And this is Nathan from Canonical. He's at the Ubuntu booth. And of course, they talk about all kinds of things, but Noah had a chance to ask him specifically about challenging Android market share and iOS market share, and then also getting some of our classic favorite Linux apps on a converged desktop. So I'll play that, and here we go.
Your guess on Ubuntu or Canonical's ability to leverage market penetration in a very heavily populated iOS and Android world.
Well, when Android came out, I watched I was interested. I watched the press release, and 15 minutes later, when the pre-orders opened, I bought one, and waited a month and got it. And there were about 30 apps available for Android when it first came out, and it was exciting because it was a Linux-based phone that promised to be one platform across many different model phones.
Right.
And so I think it lived up to that, but unfortunately. Google develops Android in secret, and they do a release, they throw the code over the wall, and that's it. And you take it or leave it. Ubuntu, even on the phone, is developed the exact same way Ubuntu is on the desktop, on the server, on the cloud. It's all done in the open. People criticize, well, this is looking rough, or that's not ready yet. But the thing is that Ubuntu cooked for 3 years before we even saw it. Whereas this was done in the open, starting from the desktop images. And actually, Ubuntu on this phone is running 1504, or what will be 1504 in April. And it's the exact same system. But if I open up a terminal, I have the GNU user space, I have everything there.
Wow. Okay.
So when I want to develop an app for the phone, if I don't have a phone, or if sometimes this can be tricky, I can develop it on my Ubuntu desktop or laptop. I run the app, it comes up in a window with the right interface. If I make the window bigger, that's a tablet interface. I can also do a little work to make it work on the desktop if I want to.
Okay.
And that exact same code, I bring it to my phone. It's running the exact same code. I get the exact same experience. I can test it on the phone. I can package it. I can put it in the store. I can run the same program everywhere. So the development that I'm doing for the phone is identical to the development process on my desktop, on my laptop, the same thing I'm doing on the server. I get the same development story everywhere with Ubuntu.
Now, how about going the other way? So, for example, to the best of my knowledge, Thunderbird doesn't exist for Ubuntu Touch, right?
Right.
So, let's say I took the Ubuntu version of Thunderbird. Is there a way I can put that on the phone?
It would take a little bit of work, so we've done nothing to make that easy, but we've done nothing to restrict that. So,
fair enough.
So, for example, about 3 weeks ago, Will Cook posted a picture of his Ubuntu phone running LibreOffice, which I believe is probably the worst possible way to experience LibreOffice.
Yes.
But it was running under Xmir, because this is running Mir and Unity 8. So it was running. You could see everything. You could use it. You could tap, use a keyboard. So LibreOffice is completely compatible with the phone. So the only thing LibreOffice has to do to make an Ubuntu app, and they might want to do optimization, but the only thing they have to do is get a mobile interface.
Okay.
Everything else works perfectly. So when the only thing...
I'm going to pause right there now because he has more to say, but I don't want us to lose track. The only thing you have to do is make a mobile interface. Now that is sort of like the biggest but ever. That's kind of like a one more thing that is this huge announcement, because if you think about all LibreOffice has to do is make a mobile interface, well, yeah. Yeah, that's a huge challenge. That's the hardest thing possible for them probably. So yeah, that doesn't mean it's necessarily easy, but he goes on to make the point that it's at least the same code base underneath.
You have to do is take your existing awesome Ubuntu app and optimize that for mobile. And the Ubuntu SDK makes it really easy to build a really beautiful responsive interface that spans from phone to tablet to desktop without extra work. That really lowers the barrier of entry. So I think when developers begin developing for Ubuntu, they're going to find that it's as easy and pleasant to develop for the phone as it is on the desktop, because it's all Ubuntu. It's all one code base.
That's pretty cool. And of course, I keep watching on Google Plus. I see more and more apps in Popey's feed all the time, which look really cool. And they're a little optimistic, though. I mean, really, it's a little nonchalant to say all they have to do is make a mobile interface.
It does feel like I don't want to say the buck's being passed, but it does feel like it's being dismissed a touch, just a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually have tried developing for Ubuntu Touch.
Yeah.
And I have to say, well, yeah, there's a fairly big challenge with creating interfaces for existing applications. If you create a new application with Ubuntu Touch in mind, or even Ubuntu in general in mind, and you use Ubuntu SDK for it, then moving between desktop and tablets and phones becomes very easy, because their SDK actually, I was surprised how good of a job they did with helping developers create interfaces that scale automatically.
I have that, by the way, linked in the show notes for today's episode. Although, of course, what did you just say? You just said it works great when you're writing applications for Ubuntu, right? I like applications written for Linux, but that's cool. I mean, I follow what you're saying. And I'm sure
there is no
I could run them
reason why
else.
I would not want to.
Right. It would just look like butt. It would just look like butt. But I could run them somewhere else. No,
yeah, you
would.
could.
I would
there's
know.
no reason why you wouldn't be able to run it on other distros.
No, of course. It would just
you
look
just
like
have
an
to
Ubuntu.
resolve that. Yeah. The same way if you run a material design application from Android somewhere else, it looks like an Android app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose so. Which is...
I do have to say
that
ultimately toolkits are adapting. If we look at the developments that are going to the toolkits, are also contemplating these new devices, these people's will to actually port things. And we also need to acknowledge that once you move to a different platform, different device, not always you expect the same amount of functionality.
Sure.
Maybe you are just consuming, and maybe LibreOffice won't be so much as redesigning the interface, but actually hiding more elements and not make them, accessible to the same context menu, for example. Because that's not the experience you're expecting. And that type of change is not as hard as actually going and making an whole overhaul of the UI. I
agree. If you go in with the right set of expectations, it's actually not so bad. And Mike in the chat room is linking us to a video, which I'll try to remember to put in the show notes, of LibreOffice running on Ubuntu Touch. I'm just waiting for him to launch it, right? Yeah, so there's Google Maps. Okay, yeah, we see that. I want to see LibreOffice, though. There he goes. He's launching LibreOffice. So you can see if you have a tablet, it just runs in like a Xmirror window, and it's usable.
Right.
So, I mean, of course, you would want to have a mouse and keyboard, but, to be honest with you, I would prefer to have the option of carrying a mouse and keyboard, like a Bluetooth mouse and keyboard, with me in my bag, and be able to run LibreOffice when I need it. Like, for me, I like that. I don't mind that it's even actual LibreOffice, because I don't, I know if I'm going to launch LibreOffice, I know what to expect, and I'm going to bring a mouse and keyboard with me. So for me, I think it's good. I'm just saying for end users, they're going to look at that, and everybody ridiculed Microsoft. Everybody ridiculed Microsoft when people got the Windows RT tablets and you dropped down to the classic shell. Ridiculed them for it. Even though I kind of think it could be handy if you have the right set of tools. So there you go. It's a little update, and it's an interesting discussion, and who knows? I also wanted to mention Linux Fest Northwest. I know I'm getting obnoxious, but it's the end of April, 25th and the 26th. We're going to try to have as much of the crew there as possible and have multiple shows going on and go around and say hi to people. I got a little details this last Friday from the crew. There's going to be a new after party at a new location, Matt.
Oh, really? Okay.
Cool. A 3-story hotel, as a matter of fact, I believe. Or
wow.
not a hotel, a museum, sorry. And so it should be quite a hell of a show. And then Friday night, if for people that fly in early, Fedora is sponsoring a board game night up in Bellingham. So if you're getting in Friday night, the night before the fest officially starts, there will be a Fedora-sponsored board game, I believe, at the Hampton, but you'll have to double-check on that. I'll know soon.
Okay. So you said a museum, is that correct?
I believe it is a museum, and I forget which one.
Because I'm racking my brain. I think when you said 3 stores, there's one that popped into my head instantly. I'm wondering if it's that one.
And it's cool because check this out. If you go over to linuxfestnorthwest.org and you go scroll down to the best sponsors section, so you got gold sponsors. Yeah, I'm sure gold sponsors are pretty important. I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care about gold sponsors. Hold on, my touch thing's gone crazy, man. My touch thing's gone crazy. But when you go down here, look here. Oh, media, Jupiter Broadcasting. Boom, right there. Oh,
there it is.
Friday night is Fedora. Saturday night, that party at the museum is actually being paid for by Microsoft. How about that?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's I'm still reeling from last year because they were downright civil. Actually, it was just kind of like, okay.
You know how expensive lanyards are? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Anyways, we're going to have lanyards at Linux Fest Northwest to give out. It's going to be pretty cool. So if you're going to make it, there is a hotel up in Bellingham, Washington that you'll probably want to stay at. They're going to have a special Linux Fest Northwest deal, and I think if it's not attached to the hotel, it's close to the hotel. And the best part is there's going to be a free shuttle between the hotel and the Linux Fest Northwest campus. So you'll want to stay at the Hampton Inn. That's where they'll have the free shuttle. And I believe Hampton Inn might even be at the Bellingham Airport if you can just fly in right there. And then you don't have to worry about transportation, and you can also call them and take advantage of the Linux Fest Northwest special. It's the Hampton Inn.
It's not at the airport, but it is a short drive from the airport, and they will pick you up from the airport if you call them.
Perfect. Thank you,
Nice.
Blaster. Thank you. Is that where you stayed last year?
Yes, it is. It's where I'm staying this year.
Yeah, that's the one
Very
that
cool.
the Fest guys also recommend you stay at. So you got it
Very
dialed
cool.
in over there, Blaster. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that info. And I'd love to see anybody in the audience there. It should be a great show. And if you can't make it, we are intending to live stream the hell out of it. So we'll probably be live Saturday and Sunday from there. So you could check it out. I think it should be it's one of the best. I think it's one of the best shows in the U.S. if you can make it. All right, before we get to our next topic, which possibly promises to be the perfect Linux laptop, but Chris is a little skeptical, I want to tell you about our next sponsor, and that's DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to making my data center dreams come true. No, I kid. No, they're really dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server. Now, they are my data center, and it's easy. It's a no-brainer. Why? I can get started in less than 55 seconds, and you can too. And pricing plans start at only $5 a month. That'll get you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, one CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. Terabyte. It's ridiculous. Look, listen, if you don't have a huge podcast, just go stick it up on a DigitalOcean droplet. It's cheaper than anything else for $5. I mean, I seriously, starting out, if I could have done that, it'd have been great. These days, Scale Engine's the way for me. I tell you what, but when I started out, I think I would have probably had my website on one droplet, my MP3 files on another droplet, and like my forms on. I mean, why not? At $5, you honestly could load them all up on one droplet. But I from a security standpoint and a maintenance standpoint, and the value is just so insane that I'll just spin up multiple droplets. So for me, I've got droplets dedicated to specific functionalities. Now, some of them do a bunch of other extra things too. They're not one job. But looking back now at how I've built infrastructures in the past, I've sort of been revising them in my head, like kind of daydreaming. If I was going to do that again, how would I do it on DigitalOcean? And I think podcast hosting is one of the first things I would do on DigitalOcean. Of course, there's so many other things too. And of course, they have one-click installations for things like WordPress or Drupal or Ruby on Rails or GitLab too. And they have data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and London. It's really, though, their interface. It's so great. They have a really intuitive control panel. And power users can replicate it on a larger scale with the company's straightforward API. And it really is handy because there's a bunch of great apps you can take advantage of. Or if you're a little savvy yourself and you don't have to be all that savvy, you can just put something together pretty quickly. But there's a lot of there's desktop apps, there's mobile apps, there's things to snap it in with existing projects, modules for programming languages. I mean, it's really well done. And then to sort of round it all off, they have a great set of always improving tutorials. They've also recently launched FreeBSD support. That's pretty cool too. So here's how you can get started. You get a $10 credit over at DigitalOcean. This is key because they got a lot of great things you can try, like CoreOS or the one-click deployments, or try out their snapshot system, which is really nice. I really like the way their snapshots work. Try it out. You can try it all out, and you'll get a $10 credit when you use our promo code DOUNPlugged. DO Unplugged, all one word, lowercase. Just apply that to your account, and then just try the $5 rig 2 months for free. Get your own Linux rig, root access, you get HTML5 console. And if you've played around with VMs and you've never really gone off and set off your own offsite backup server or something like that, just do it this route. This is so much better, and it's so fast, and the value is incredible. You'll really have a good time. DigitalOcean.com, promo code DO Unplugged. Matt, I'm a bit of a hardware head. I mean, I'm pretty solid on laptops right now. I've got the Librem coming eventually, and I got the XPS 13 because I think if you're gonna get a non-System 76 laptop, like if you want sort of like the MacBook Air kind of competitor with the super high resolution like 4K screen, I think the XPS 13 is a serious contender, and I think a lot of people will be looking at it to load Linux. That's why I picked it up, so I could try it out. And Dell has since then released another workstation. They call it part of their Sputnik project. It's the M3800 Developer Edition, and it's kind of like a MacBook Pro competitor. And I think Ars Technica has the review to read on this. They really have a great write-up. And they talk about some of the issues that I've ran into. So I wanted to commiserate a little bit about my continued search for like my quote-unquote perfect Linux laptop. And then I kind of wanted to take some opinions from you guys too. But first, let's start on a little bit of the review here. So to begin with, the price, about $1,500 at base. The one they tested at ours, a little over $2,000. And again, it's the M3800. Ships with Ubuntu 14.04. It has a high-quality build. No squeaks, no rattles. 16 gigabytes of RAM. He got it with a 256 gigabyte SSD and i7 CPU. Display is bright, beautiful. Thunderbolt port on it, though. Doesn't really work well with Ubuntu except for video. I ran into that same issue. Applications are not really ready for high DPI like Chrome It's just, and it ships with Chromium as default. Just does not look good in high DPI. That is a continued problem I have too. Opera much better. You know, it has a few other things like battery life when the NVIDIA GPU is devastating. Dell, when I got my XPS 13, Dell quoted me 15 hours of battery life, and I've even heard some podcasters going, well, look at Dell's new laptops with 15 hours. Yeah, BS. I'm getting 7 hours, 8 hours tops. Perfectly fine. I don't really mind, but it's no 15 hours, so I wasn't surprised that he dinged that for the review. But I was looking at this thing. It's big. It's 15 inches. And I'm trying to think to myself, what makes the perfect Linux laptop? And this is something I've searched for and searched for and searched for. And Kernel Linux, I don't know if you're still in. Did you leave? Because I know because he's just recently got a new laptop too, but he vacated. And it's something that when I searched for, I'm pretty happy with the XPS 13. But the biggest downside for me is Linux's high DPI support is still pretty sucky, unfortunately. Yeah. Matt, for you, are you a laptop guy at all?
I had one. It long since left the building, but for me, it was basically a matter of I don't like the glossy screen. I want it to be, matted. That's just for my own eyes. Does it manage to handle a wireless in connection? Cool. Is the battery life at minimum of 3 hours, preferably more? If it is, great. And then of course just the keyboard not spongy. That's another thing. I can't stand that.
Right.
Yeah. And then touchpad sensitivity. What are my options as far as disabling it? I know a couple of hacks that I can use to disable a touchpad while typing, but a lot of times you can actually get a touchpad that will work correctly when you set it to turn off. So.
I noticed too that Dell. So the XPS 13 I got came with a Broadcom Dell proprietary Linux. Not very happy loving kind of wireless driver or wireless card, and I swapped it out with an Intel 7000 series, which is the same one they ship. Yeah, the AC7260, which is the same one that Dell's put in this laptop. So I would imagine that would avoid the out-of-the-box wireless issue, which was my primary issue when I tried my XPS 13, is my wireless didn't work out of the box. I don't think this is a particularly good-looking laptop either. Unfortunately, I think Dell kind of has a bit of a miss here. I think the XPS 13 is a lot more competitive than this, but.
Could be. It really could be.
Look at that. And it still has the Windows sticker on the bottom, Matt.
Well, I go back to, actually years before I even was a part of Jupiter Broadcasting, years ago when I first came to System 76, what brought me to it was after a interesting Dell experience, and dating back to when I went to bought the laptop from them, which they promptly lost. But when I bought the laptop from them, they were still recommending Office and various Windows software after I designated. I mean, it's just like...
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Really? It's like, come on, guys. So, for me, it's just like, they could come out with the coolest thing in the world. Honestly, I've been burned by them so badly. I don't know. I'd have a real hard time with it.
Wimpy, I'm curious, what makes your perfect Linux laptop? What is it for you that makes a good machine that specifically to run Linux?
Well, there's a couple of things. I like lightweight. So not very big, and I like a proper keyboard. So and I've got a penchant for the old TrackPoint nipple.
Right. Yeah. So the classic ThinkPad nipple.
Yeah. So mostly I buy relatively old second-hand ThinkPads. So my newest computer to me is a ThinkPad X201, which I think is about 5 years old. And that's quite good for me because it's an i5 and everything. And battery life is important too. And the ThinkPads are good in that regard.
Sure.
And if you pair your Linux machine with TLP, you can probably get, in some cases... Go on.
Well, so what you're telling me is essentially what makes the perfect Linux laptop is a Lenovo. But what do you do if, say, Lenovo starts making you unhappy? Where do you go? Like, are all your eggs in one basket?
They've suited me so far, but no. I mean, companies like System 76 would be where I would have to go for a new machine. The problem is that I can't afford the upfront price for a new machine from those companies. So if I needed a new computer, I'd have to save for some considerable time before I could afford one. But there are places I could go.
So the screenshot I'm showing here from Ars Technica kind of shows you how the web renders on the Chromium browser on a high DPI display. It's tiny. It looks good, and Unity itself does a good job of scaling up, and other GTK applications will do a good job of scaling up, but yeah, it's kind of hit and miss. I feel like if somebody came to me and said, I don't have a lot of money to spend, but I really want a high resolution display, I would say at this point, if you're tight on money, don't get a 4K display, because a lot of stuff looks fine, but a lot of stuff doesn't look fine. And if you are powering that with an Intel GPU, there are times it will work harder than you want it to. If you have a dedicated NVIDIA graphics like this thing does, it's not so bad. But then they notice when they turn that NVIDIA GPU on, battery life goes in half. Half! So that's
I believe it. Yeah. I'm not surprised by that at all. But, at the same time, it's like when it comes to laptops or even desktops to a certain extent, if you're someone that needs that, kind of quality, that's got to be a larger consideration in your overall experience. But I think for Joe Average, honestly, I think a decent keyboard, a decent battery, and a display that is reasonably good, and of course not weighing a ton. Yeah. I think that's really what it comes down for most people.
I am waiting. I am waiting to hear updates on the Purism Librem 15. We now have the boot screen. I guess that's going to be the boot screen right there. There's just this nice white Purism logo. It reached its funding, and they're still posting updates about the project. And I think Noah's been checking in with them from time to time as well. So it looks like when that ships, it's going to have an i7 in June. The one will ship in April, one will ship in June. And it's going to be a pretty nice rig. So hopefully we'll see. I don't know if it's going to be the perfect Linux laptop, but the quest to find the perfect Linux laptop, in my opinion, continues on.
So there's actually one thing that I don't know. I've noticed that in the text on their campaign mentions an integrated Intel video card. In the video, they talk about the NVIDIA one. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's going on with that.
You talking about the Librem?
Yes, the Purism, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to have both, yeah.
It's going to have both, because it's like in the text it only says an Intel one.
Right. I think in our interview with him, he said it would have both, if I recall correctly, because I tried to clarify that point, if I recall.
Okay.
Yeah. I would have to go re-listen to remember.
Because it does look weird, because for me I was rechecking it, and then the text only mentions one of the cards, and then in the video mentions the NVIDIA. It feels a little bit sketchy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. If somebody was, if you wanted to, you could check. You could. I think it is in that interview. Yeah.
All right, I'll rewatch it.
I'm looking forward to it. I hope mine's in the April batch, even if it doesn't mean, because I really want to give it a review, and I don't know. I still feel like the quest continues on. The quest continues, just like the quest continues on to always better yourself, doesn't it? And that's why our next sponsor is so perfect. That's Linux Academy. Go over to linuxacademy.com/Linux. Right? I believe that is our URL. No, I'm sorry, it's Unplugged. linuxacademy.com/Unplugged. You'd think I would know. The reason why I was a little distracted is I have the coolest note here that I wanted to read from a Linux Unplugged audience member who heard about Linux Academy. So get started. Keep this in mind, linuxacademy.com/Unplugged. Go there to get started. You'll get our special 33% discount, which is really awesome. And Linux Academy is a great resource for you to learn more about the systems you're probably going to end up having to use, administer, be responsible for, or want to someday. linuxacademy.com/Unplugged. Go get started over there. I got an email in from Mike. He says, I just want to say thanks to the whole Jupiter Broadcasting community. I wouldn't have known about Linux Academy if it wasn't for you guys. I was able to get my Linux Plus certification and land my dream job as a Linux administrator for a hosting company. I went over to Linux Academy forums to thank them too and made sure they heard about it from you guys. They knew it was from you guys. Thanks again, Mike. And I get stories like that all the time. Linux Academy is set up by people who truly care about this stuff and really know the subject material. And so they devoted their entire site to it. They hyper-focus in on this area, and so that way they super serve you. You know why that makes a difference. If you're a Linux enthusiast, you know how much it makes a difference when the people behind it care and use Linux and open source. They have step-by-step video courses, downloadable comprehensive study guides, and it's never been a better time to join Linux Academy because they have a huge announcement coming very soon. On April 16th, they're going to have a live show at 9 p.m. Central Time, where they're going to make some of their biggest content announcements ever over there. You're going to want to go check that out. Also, they've got some great news if you're going in for one of the LPI, like the LPI C1 exam or Linux Plus. They are now CompTIA approved quality content, which means you can go take the study lessons from Linux Academy and then just go get your certification. Right? And you can do this from the comfort of your own home. And what's really nice about that is Linux Academy will just let you get all that material offline. You can listen to the courseware like when you're commuting. You can set how much availability you have, and it'll automatically create courseware for you that matches that. You can get step-by-step, this is where you're at percentage-wise, so you can see I have this much time for this area, then it's going to take me this long to move on to here, and you can do quizzes to check yourself. And 7+ Linux distributions you get to choose from, and the courseware all matches that, and so does the virtual labs they spin up automatically. It's just such a cool system, and you're really going to be impressed with the stuff they announced on the 16th. So go to linuxacademy.com/unplugged. Get our special 33% discount and go check them out. It's a great time. You're really going to, and I love that you're going to get that 33% discount right now when they're just about to make the service even better. It's just such a cool opportunity. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. So something really nerdy happened this week, and too bad Alan missed his opportunity to bash ButterFS and sing the praises of ZFS. Aw, shame. Too bad he had to leave early. Well, there was actually a pretty big developers conference going on talking about the future of Linux storage. Oh, I know. So exciting, right? Well, turns out maybe things are going to look up for good old ButterFS. So let's dive in right into that, because I think that's the piece that's the most relevant to our audience, because we all want to see ButterFS succeed, but we all know it's got a little bit of room. So Chris Mason, he's a Facebook software engineer. We've talked about him before. He's one of the ButterFS maintainers. He explained how Facebook uses ButterFS. ButterFS has many advantages of file systems, such as the ability to handle both numerous small files and single files as large as 6 exabytes, a baked-in RAID, built-in file system compression, and integrated multi-storage device support. Facebook, of course, runs on Linux. To be exact, Facebook runs the 3.10 and 3.18 Linux kernels on an internal distribution which is based on CentOS. For Facebook, the real win is that ButterFS is stable and fast under an endless input-output operation per second, IOPS, pounding from Facebook's constantly updating users. That's good news. The bad news is ButterFS is still way too slow for traditional databases such as MySQL. For those systems, Facebook is still using XFS, which I thought that was kind of interesting. To coordinate the two file systems, Facebook uses Gluster, the open source distributed file system. So this is all kind of some good details we're getting here. Facebook, which works hand in glove with upstream ButterFS Linux kernel developers, is working on improving ButterFS's database speed. Kind of neat.
That is interesting. It's one of those things to where, I think a lot of people go to these social sites and they just see everything. Well, if it's Facebook, whether it works or not is kind of hit and miss, but most social sites work pretty well for the most part. And it's interesting to see what they're choosing and, how that's going forward and where ButterFS fits into the whole thing. It's going to be fascinating to see where things go 2-3 years from now.
It gives me, I'm not a big fan of Facebook. But I'm kind of glad that they have a bit of their horse hitched to that wagon. Is that the right? Am I using that right? Because
I think so, but I would definitely agree that it's not like attending the Federation Council or something when you go to Facebook. It's pretty. The culture is definitely a little different.
But the fact that the way Facebook is approaching this is they seem to have identified ButterFS as a critical piece of Linux technology. So they hire one of the guys that works on it, and that's his job, and he interfaces directly with the Linux kernel team. And it's a pretty ideal situation. So it seems like it's pretty important to them. And in that case, that means ButterFS probably has a pretty good shot of having long-term funding and longevity of development behind it, which I think is pretty important.
I think it's extremely important.
Yeah, Daredevil, you had a point about their upstream giveback?
Yeah, they've actually been very keen on trying to get things to the open source community back as fast as possible. I can give you the example of HHVM and their programming language.
Right.
They actually went immediately to the Debian folks and opened an ITP, which is intended to package requests, and they've been working directly with the Debian maintainers to get that across and spread through there. It's really hard doing an effort, and most of the times I see an actual, just not put the project out and not maintain it. They actually continuously support the project and do an effort to make it land to the community back as soon as possible. So I think that's a good part on that.
That is really cool to hear, actually. That's good to know. Before we wrap up, has anybody else noticed all the attention the Ubuntu Mate project gets these days?
Yeah.
Yes. Have you been noticing this? So Wimpy makes a video about including tilde or something like that. Wimpy announces that Ubuntu Mate 15.04 will have tilde, a very nice drop-down menu, and Wimpy made a very great video that sort of explains the rationale of how he came to use it and why, which maybe we get him to repeat here in just a sec. But next thing I know, I'm seeing it on 3 or 4 or 5 Linux news websites. Wimpy, you have a bit of a sensation on your hands here.
Yeah, how did that happen?
I don't know. I think it's great. So tell us about tilde.
Yeah, everyone's really keen on such a simple fish.
I was very surprised by it. So, and you know what? I've heard you mention it before, but I liked your rationale and how you came to use it and why it's sticking in the distro.
Yeah, so when I was working on the Compiz integration, and I kept breaking Compiz, you're left without window decorators, so you're kind of stuffed.
Yeah.
So I installed tilde as my get out of jail free card.
In case
so
everything breaks.
Every time I broke Compiz, I could just F12, reset Compiz, start Marco, and get my session back up and running again. Yeah. So whilst I was deving Compiz, that was my safety net. And I got so accustomed to using it, I started using it for other things, and I thought, you know what, this is actually kind of useful, so I'm going to leave it in.
Sure.
And that's how it came to be in the distro.
And so why tilde over, say, like Quake? Because Quake's always what I use.
Yeah, well, I tried both, but tilde runs in about 5 megs of RAM, and Quake runs in about 25 to 30 megs of RAM. Oh. So if I want something that I'm leaving in that's turned on by default, I don't want it to be too large, because there's a good number of people running Ubuntu Mate on resource-constrained hardware, so I didn't want to bloat it out unnecessarily.
Of course, they really appreciate that, I'm sure. You know, I think what it is, and this is what I have ragged on Canonical for taking a little focus off the desktop for the last couple of years, is what I believe, and what you're doing with Ubuntu Mate may be proving this out, is the Ubuntu desktop got really close to the goal line. And what you're doing by like adding things like sensible Compiz integration, the tilde integration, but also like the folder color stuff, just these little, it's not the final 10%, that's not the right way to put it, but these closing the gaps that adds these little things. Like when I saw you and started including folder color, I thought, you know what, I should probably install folder color. I want folder color. Like that sounds like something just a nice little visual indicator. And it's these little things that you're just sort of polishing off and adding a little bit here and there to this traditional desktop paradigm. And I think people are recognizing that. Plus, let's be honest, Ubuntu 14.04 and Ubuntu 14.10 are decent platforms for people to distribute applications on. So there's some excitement there, and you guys are polishing off these little edges here and adding these nice little touches. I think that's why people are getting excited about it.
Well, thank you very much. And whilst you've mentioned folder color, the developer of folder color has been working on a new version which now supports the Numix icon themes, and also has a facility where if you want to change the default color for all of your icons, so effectively theme your icons, you can now do that as well. So whether or not that lands for 15.04, we'll have to see. There's a feature freeze exception filed for that. But hopefully that'll make it in time. If not, it'll be in 15.10.
Cool. And I'm gonna something I've been following is the I know you have a lot of places you distribute info. And maybe this isn't even the best one, but one I've been following is the Google Plus community. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Everything somehow makes it to the Google Plus. So yeah, that's probably the best place to follow. And if not there, then the actual Ubuntu Mate community, where there's some deeper discussion with some of the community members. That if you want to get the skinny on the Raspberry Pi development, the Raspberry Pi 2 development, and the Odroid C1 development, that's all happening in the Ubuntu Mate community.
Very good. And you know what? I actually had an email in about that, so thank you. So that's a good place to go to. Yeah. You know, I've been running the version of Ubuntu Mate based on 14.04 here as my my Skype and Mumble machine now for weeks, and it's just been rock solid. So I love it. I think it's a great distro.
Well, it's been, I'll tell you, it's been, the more I use it, the more I become married to it. It's because I'm finding that I'm not having to screw with the stuff I was having to screw with before with other
you're just using the computer now.
Yeah, crazy thought, right? I could actually get my work done. Like what he mentioned with Tilda, I actually installed it after he mentioned it the first time before and I was just like, oh, this is sweet.
Well,
I got a low resource machine. This is fantastic.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. All right, well, so we'll wrap it up there. And I have so much more I could talk about in regards to watches. I feel like I could talk about watches for some reason for like a whole episode, but I'm saving all of you the burden of having to listen to me go on and on about my Pebble Watch. However, I will mention I installed a couple of really cool apps. If you've got a Pebble Watch, go get the let's see, where is it? And I assume you also have a Lollipop. On 11 will sync your steps to Google Fit, so you can track your Fit stuff with Google from your Pebble. And also, there's a really great sleep app called I think it's just called Android Sleep. Something like that works with the Pebble to track your sleep. I'm having a lot of fun with the Pebble, man. I'll just leave it at that. Cool. I'll just leave it at that. I won't bore everybody else to tears with all of the details. I'm sorry.
Hey, watches are cool. I used to have one with a calculator on it.
Hey, it's the new thing.
Dates me a little bit, but that's okay.
No, it's the new thing. It's back. The new thing is the old thing.
Right.
Yeah. Matt, wouldn't it be nice if we had everybody join us next week? Now, I know daylight savings has been a bit of an issue, but we do the Unplugged show on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific, and you can go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar to get that converted to your local time zone. You go to jblive.tv, we've got the chat room embedded. You can join our open mumble room. We just check your mic, and you can comment on the stories. So we really would love to have you join us. Hey, Matt, have a great week, and I'll talk to you next Tuesday, okay?
All right. See you then.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning this week's episode of Linux Unplugged. See you right back here next week. Oh, I'm glad daylight savings worked out for you, Humi. You're the one audience member I think that hasn't been messed up by it. Yeah, Sleep as Android. Thank you, Miker89. That's the app. It's really cool because Sleep as Android, if you have any sleep issues, it's really a good troubleshooting application because it uses the accelerometer in the Nexus, it uses the microphone to monitor noise in the room, and then it uses the accelerometer in the Pebble to detect any movement, and it combines all of that data together, and then so if I move and my Pebble tracks that, it will then at the same time correlate that to any room noise, and it'll show a waveform spike of any noise in the room, so I can listen to somebody ripping ass or snoring or whatever it is. And then it'll also give me my total time of REM sleep. And that is extremely useful for me because that's what I'm troubleshooting right now. Because I go to bed at a decent time, but I wake up. If I go to bed, say, at 10:30 and I wake up at midnight versus I wake up at, say, 5 in the morning, I feel exactly the same either way. It feels like I got the same amount of sleep. So I know there's something that's not right there. So I'm trying to troubleshoot how much sleep I'm actually getting at night, how much good sleep. And that, according to the Pebble, is last night I actually got 2 hours of sleep.
Chris, I've got a little tip for you.
Oh, okay.
Because I got bitten in the arse by it this morning.
All right.
It's BitSync again. So I went round and updated a couple of my boxes this morning, and BitSync 1.4 got replaced with BitSync 2.0.
It is up. I was wondering if they were going to replace it.
Okay, right. Well, I don't know what OS you're running on, but in the AUR there's a BT Sync 1.4 package, and the guy that makes the Ubuntu packages, in his Debian repository, he's got a repository that is specifically pinned to the 1.4 version.
And so
I've gone round and
so now there's essentially a 1.4. Yeah. So I have to go uninstall BitTorrent Sync and install this 1.4 version.
Have you upgraded to 2 yet?
No.
So on the machines that I hadn't upgraded to 2, I just installed the 1.4 version, and that's fine. It just, replaces the 1.4 version that I'm already running.
So I just did an upgrade last night. Do you think it might have pulled? I have to check. I don't know.
Yeah, so there is a guide on the BT Sync 2.0 Help Center. There is a guide on how to roll back to 1.4, and you are going to want to do this because BT Sync 2.0 is not 1.4 out of beta. It's a completely different product, and it works in a completely different way, and it will not suit your use case of handing out a key that multiple people can then snag. It's all designed about, these are my devices in my network and I want to link them together. And with the BT Sync 2.0 package, there's no way to create what they now call a classic share, where you say, you know, make me some keys. You can only now create these device linked shares in the 2.0 system.
Oh no.
Yeah.
What am I going to do?
Do what I did. You can roll back. It's fairly straightforward to roll back to 1.4.
Yeah, but what are you going to do about security fixes and future?
Yeah, well, this is it. This is my holding position until I get C-File up and running.
And how is C-File at distributing to large audiences files?
You can share links via its web thing, but I haven't actually got around to testing that, so I can't say how well it will suit your use case.
Screwed.
Damn.
So
basically, I should downgrade back to BitTorrent Sync 1.4, huh?
Well, it depends. I mean, I'm going to, because the way I'm using the product, I could probably go to 2.0, but I was really wary of the fact that I didn't realize that it worked in a different way, and suddenly the two instances that I'd upgraded were no longer connected to one another. The old classic shares were still syncing, but in terms of how new shares would work, they weren't linked together. So I've rolled back so I can test BT Sync 2.0 in its own installation in a VM somewhere, just to see how it works and figure it all out before I either stick with it and pay my money and upgrade, or move to something else. And quite possibly I'm going to move to C-File.
This is super unfortunate, because I'll give you another use case. People have asked for a complete, as we have it, complete archive of the Linux Action Show. And there's not one spot you can go and get everything from episode 1 to episode 356 or whatever we're at. And part of that is because where do you store all that? But part of it's a lot of transfer, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the things we used BitTorrent Sync for was we started working on a collaborative effort where everybody went into some people have personal archives where we have gaps missing. And we started all collaborating in one BitTorrent Sync folder. And I just gave them out the key on the subreddit.
Yeah.
I can't do anything like that with any other file services.
No, and so my advice is roll back to 1.4 as your holding position, so you retain your existing behavior. Go and test 2.0 in its own VM that isn't linked in any way with your existing BT Sync devices, and see if it's going to continue to work for you. If you are running BT Sync 2.0, say I'm one of your subscribers, if I'm running BT Sync 2.0, I can paste classic share keys in, but you can't create them.
Okay. Yeah, because that's the other thing is I can't prevent the audience from upgrading.
No.
Yeah. Well, this is screwed. This is so screwed. And I can't do the other thing I was thinking is there are software packages out there that will automatically create like torrent feeds and all that kind of stuff, but it's not the same. It's not like a distributed content. It's just I should have seen it coming. I actually did see it coming. So I'm actually none of this surprises me at all. I would not say I'm caught surprised by any of this.
The only thing I'm surprised about is 1.4 was it's a beta, and 2.0 is the final product, but it's a completely different product. It works in a completely different way.
Yeah.
So all of that beta testing we weren't beta testing the product that has just been released. If you're running BT Sync 2.0 now, you are a beta tester again, because it's so fundamentally different.
Right.
It can't have been, tested at the scale that 1.4 was.
Yeah. C-File does.
I wonder where I can go to download the latest version of 1.4.
Right, okay, let me paste a link in the chat room.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be looking into C-File. That's for sure.
I've never heard of what's C-File.
Open source cloud storage for your teams and organizations. Organize files into libraries. Each library can be shared between users and into groups. A library can also be selectively synced to any device. Edit and comment on files online. Hey, Wimpy, can you comment on that part? Edit and comment on files online. Is that like collaborative editing?
I haven't tested any of that stuff yet. I'm really only interested in file sync.
Yeah.
What I've
you're doing the
done so
self-hosted,
far is
right?
yeah. And all I've done so far is gone and read the documentation a couple of times so I know what to do when I get the time to actually set up a server.
Huh. Now, why use a C file? What about sync thing?
I've used sync thing. It's not even if you've only got, I've got maybe 8 or 9 devices that are in my sync network. And just managing that number of devices with sync thing, having to keep exchanging the keys every which way is unmanageable. So it just doesn't scale. You know, if you've got 2 computers, it's great. If you've got 4 computers, it's tricky. And if you've got, more than 6, it starts to get really cumbersome.
Okay.
I'm looking at ccloud.cc, which is a online commercial version of C file. And because I was just curious, if I'd probably roll my own, but this one uses Amazon Web Services for the backend storage.
Gross.
Gross, huh? Well, I'll play with it some more, and we'll see what we get.